Hello everybody. In this video I will show you how to graph three equations, and this is in connection to the Unit 5 Parabolas exploration activity. So we will walk through number 1 together, and then your responsibility will be to finish the remaining 4 questions. Okay? The whole purpose of this is to try to look at what's happening to our base equation, which every time we're going to enter an x squared. If you notice, all of them start with x squared. And then we're going to manipulate that equation some way, shape, or form to try to figure out what the relationship is between the numbers that have been modified on the equation and how that affects the graph that we see. All right, so to get to this screen, to type it in, we want to first make sure you already watched the video on how to reset the default settings. The default settings will have these window ranges that you see here on your graph paper. It will go from -10 to 10 on the x-axis, and similarly we'll do the same thing on the y-axis. So if you want to enter these three equations, we're going to do the y equals button, which is the top left. And graphing calculators actually allow you to graph more than one function at a time. We're going to graph the first one here of x squared by pushing the X key. And that basically is the button you always push for independent variables. So even like the next unit when we're working with time, if the equation has a time in it, you're going to use this key for time. All right, so this is always your independent variable. Now to square it, go over here on the left, and then there's an x squared key. And to see what that looks like, you can push the graph button. So there's a rough sketch of our y equals x squared function. Notice it does pass the vertical line test, so it is a function. But you're just going to sketch that one right here. Okay? Now, what we're trying to do again is observe what happens as we enter the second and third equation. So don't clear it out, but if you go to your y equals menu, we can scroll down to y2 by arrowing down and typing x squared one more time, but this time we're going to add 2. In other words, it's going to take all of the output values, and after you square them, after you square your input, it will add 2 to all of those, which will affect all of the outputs by, we'll see what happens here. See how everything just moved up 2 units? If you look vertically, every point moved up 2 units. So, if you haven't done so yet, take a second to sketch the graph that we see here on your graph paper as well. So at this point, you should have 2 graphs. They're rough sketches. The key idea is to make sure the y-intercept is correct and the rest of the sketch looks approximately the same. All right, and we're going to repeat this process one more time. By now, you probably can predict what's going to happen, and that's what I wanted you to be able to do. All right, and actually, you can enter it in any equation you want. Generally speaking, you just want to enter it in the one that that comes next. I'll show you one other feature after we graph this. So I'm going to type this third one in, x squared plus 4, and if I graph it, we'll see the third one show up. All right, so sketch the third one on your graph paper, making sure to correctly pass through the y-intercept at 0, 2, and 4 for each of the 3 graphs. And the other thing I wanted to point out is sometimes you've got 3 equations that you've entered, but you maybe only want to see one of those. So let's say we just wanted to look at the last one. The dark box here means that that equation will show up. So if you move your mouse to the left and press enter over that equal sign, what it does is it actually unhighlights it. And so when the calculator goes to make the graph, it will only graph the ones that are darkened. For in this case, so in this case, Y3 will be the only one that gets graphed. And you'll see the other 2 get skipped over. So kind of a cool feature. Sometimes you only want to look at one, but you know, you might need it later. But just by pressing enter over that equal sign, you can see what's happening is it's only graphing the ones that are darkened. All right, now, if you go back over here, after you get your 3 graphs sketched, hopefully you recognize that adding something onto the end of the squared term, basically all that does is, oh shoot, we didn't want that. I'll just say it and you can write it. By adding something onto the end, what happens to the graph? It essentially shifts the graph up that many units. So the second graph got moved up 2 units. The third graph got moved up 4 units. Please continue on with the next 4. Clear out these equations. Actually, you could keep y1, and then as you enter the other 2 equations, your job is to look for a pattern and see what happens. Thanks.